So today we welcome David into the group, and he's going to be chatting to us all about Google Ads and how they can help your business. And I've already explained to David that we have lots of different types of people in the group. Some are business owners, some are employees, service-based, product-based, you name it, we've got the right mix. So, David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. My name's David, obviously, and I'm a digital marketing consultant. I've been in digital marketing in one form or another for about the last 15, 16 years. I've in the past had my own agency, which dealt with clients from all sorts of different sectors. But the common thing was they all wanted to get more business from the web. And for the last 5 years or so, since I sold my share of my agency, I've worked as a one-man band consultant, working primarily with people in financial services, mortgage brokers, financial advisors, those kind of people.
Yeah.
Helping them generate leads from their own websites rather than buying them from other sources or relying on word of mouth.
Fantastic. Sounds very exciting.
Yeah, it's there's worse things to do.
So for those of us who are like myself and have no idea about Google Ads whatsoever, can you give us a bit of an overview as to what it even means? Yeah, what's the starting point? What is it?
Yeah. Sure. Well, okay. So even if you've never heard the term Google Ads, or actually the other thing that is an extra point of confusion, it used to be called Google AdWords until 2 or 3 years ago. Google rebranded it. But it's exactly the same thing. Yeah. So Google Ads, you'll have seen them even if you've never used them, because whenever you search for anything on Google or pretty much anything, there'll be up to 4 adverts appear at the top of the search results and potentially another 3 at the bottom of the page as well. Yeah. And those ads are there because the advertisers have said to Google that they've given Google a list of keywords, like search terms, basically. Yeah. I said, if someone types in one of these things, I want my advert to appear. And the advertisers write their own adverts within, the parameters that Google allows. And what makes it different from most traditional forms of advertising is it's a form of advertising called pay per click, or PPC. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say that slowly because sometimes if I say it quickly, people think I'm selling paper clips and not the stationery game. But it's pay per click, and it's called that because the advertisers don't pay for their advert to appear. They only pay if someone clicks on their ad and goes through to their website. So from that point of view, it's in many ways much lower risk than if you put an advert in the newspaper or a massive billboard at the station or whatever. Yeah. That's going to cost you, even if no one looks at it and no one responds to it. Whereas with any form of pay-per-click advertising, you've removed some of that risk, because if your advert is of no interest to anyone or you're selling a product nobody wants, you've wasted your time but not your money.
That makes more sense then. So I guess it's a lot more specific because you can target and aim like the demographics and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean the primary targeting is by the keyword. So if you're selling I don't know, blue apples, then your keyword will be blue apples, and your ad would appear if someone typed that in. But you can also layer that with demographic type targeting. So you could say, for example, I'm willing to pay more for the clicks if it's if the searcher is a woman in their 60s. Yeah, or is someone who lives in London rather than Birmingham. And obviously, that will vary depending on what it is that you're promoting.
That makes sense.
And on the subject of actually what you're willing to pay, it runs on an auction basis.
Okay.
So each advertiser says what the maximum is that they're willing to pay for each click, and then that is one of the factors that Google uses to decide which ads appear and in which order. And then if yours is the ad that is clicked, the amount you actually pay is just enough to beat the next person in the auction. So it's a bit like if you're bidding something on eBay, if you bid £20 for something on eBay and yours ends up being the highest bid, but the next person was bidding £15, then you'll actually pay £15.10 or whatever. And it's the same. It's the same kind of principle. So you specify the maximum you'll pay, but you'll very often pay a bit less per click than that, depending on who else is in the auction.
So is there kind of like an ideal amount that you sort of spend on each ad, or like is it I mean, like, what's the lowest amount that someone can
Well,
pay?
it varies because because like any auction, the more people there are bidding on a particular term, the more that pushes the price up. And of course, it varies massively from from one keyword to another based on how much money there is to be made in that industry. So a keyword for something like I don't know, injury claims compensation, where the lawyers can make lots and lots of money out of that. Because they can make lots of money out of it, they'll bid quite high amounts. So you could be looking at 15, 20, 25 pound a click or whatever. Whereas if it's something far less competitive, you might get the clicks for 20, 30, 50p, something like that.
Oh, wow. So really quite varied then.
Yeah. And one of the secrets to, well, it's not really a secret, but one of the things to making it work well for your business is not to go after the really obvious keywords, because they'll have everyone bidding on them and have higher prices. But you need to try and find those less common keywords that all your competitors won't necessarily have thought of, because they'll get lower cost per click.
Well, we've got a few people watching us. Matt says, how does the return on investment on Google Ads compare to the likes of Facebook ads and other social media advertising?
Good question. Obviously the return on investment will be affected by a lot of things, like what it is that you're selling, the product or service, and also how good you are at running campaigns on Google or Facebook. But if you assume all those things are equal, I generally think the return on investment is higher on Google Ads, and the reason for that is it's actually a very different way of advertising, a different way of marketing from Facebook ads. So if you think about the kind of person who sits down at Google and searches for something, they've actually taken the first step. They've sat down at Google and said to Google, I'm interested in buying whatever product or service it is. Okay. Let's take mortgages as an example, because that's obviously what I spend a lot of my time dealing with. So someone who sits down at Google and types in best remortgages or whatever, they clearly are looking to remortgage their house. So when they click through, there's a good chance they're going to take action. Now, on the other hand, someone who sees your advert on Facebook, people do not go on Facebook looking to get a mortgage or looking to get a new accountant or any of those kinds of things. So they've gone on Facebook to look at what their friends are up to, or look at pictures of cats, or stalk their ex, or whatever it is they're doing. And so your advert is interrupting them. It's interruption marketing.
Right.
So first of all, so that's the first hurdle you've got to get over. The fact you've got to get over the hurdle of, will they even notice your ad or pay it any attention? And then if they do click it, the next hurdle you've got is, well, they've clicked your ad, but they didn't have their mortgage buying hat on at that time. So you've got to shift them from what they were planning to do to what you're doing now. So you've got a lot more hurdles to overcome there. So if they do click your ad, there's less likelihood, and okay, I'm generalizing here, but there's less likelihood that they will immediately fill in an inquiry form or make a purchase from your site.
They're not in that frame of mind.
No, so it's more of an awareness raising, what we call top of funnel, rather than, and that's why if you are doing the people who do Facebook ads and who get a good return from it, generally they're getting a good return because they've got systems in place to then follow up those people. So the people who visit their site from a Facebook ad, they'll do something to get them onto a mailing list, or they'll do something to enable them to retarget them and show them more ads in the future and things like that. So that's why with Google Ads, it tends to be a better return on investment, and you get that return faster than you do with Facebook.
It's all a new Matt's coming fast and furiously with his questions. Is there a way of bypassing the ad block extensions in browsers?
Not so as an advertiser, I assume you mean there. Not that I'm aware of. So if someone's got an ad blocker which is working effectively and is blocking Google Ads from showing, then there's certainly not any way of making your ad show up, even when no one else's is. There are people who use ad blockers. Equally, if I talk to a room full of people, in fact, I can guarantee by now, if we were doing this in the old-fashioned way in an actual room full of people, somebody would have stuck their hand up by now and said, "That's all very well, but I never click on the ads." There's some people who go out of their way not to click on the ads because I don't know why, they're too clever to be taken in by advertising, or what, I don't know. But the fact is, there's enough people who do click on them. The last the last figures I saw for this, which are actually probably about 8 or 9 years ago now, Google were making something like 50 odd billion pounds a year from Google Ads.
Wow.
And of course, they can only do that if someone's clicking on them. So even if you're not clicking, or even if the guy down the road's got an ad blocker, there's enough other people out there who are clicking on them to make it work.
No, that's cool. Matt said he's gonna stay quiet now, but feel free to keep asking your questions, Matt.
That's because his next question was going to be, I never click on the ads, wasn't it?
Probably. Okay, so you've mentioned about the kind of AdWords that are more generic and that are harder, because in terms of like the way the auction works, I really like the analogy of eBay and thinking of it in that kind of mindset. That really helps. But how do you go about doing all this? Like, is it something, let's say someone like me could kind of just guess on what to do when it comes to thinking about what to do, or do you need to? I remember a company I used to work for, they would speak to Google and they had like a campaign manager and all the rest of it. But, you know, can anyone do it? Do you have to do your research? Do you go onto YouTube? Do you hire someone like you? What do you do?
Well, in terms of coming up with the keywords specifically, then yes, anyone can do it. So yes, there are tools that will tell you, but actually my preferred way of doing it, and this is what when I've run training on Google Ads, this is what I try and encourage the people I'm training to do as well, is rather than relying on the tools, try and actually use your own imagination and your own kind of lateral thinking and whatever. And it's basically put yourselves in the shoes of your potential customer. And that's always hard for any business owner or any marketer, because, if you work in a particular job or a particular business, you get engrossed in that and you think in a particular way. So maybe, if you're struggling to think how your client would think, talk to some actual clients, or talk to some friends or whatever and say, if you were looking, what I do for a living, if you were looking for this, what would you type into Google? And there's a story I often tell of a really good example of that was years ago. I was running a Google Ads campaign for a company, a firm of solicitors who specialized in what they in the industry call medical negligence or clinical negligence claims. So basically, someone's been to hospital, had an operation, it's gone wrong, and they want to claim compensation for it. And like any kind of personal injury stuff, because we were talking earlier on about that, weren't we? Any kind of personal injury stuff, the cost per click is massive. And I thought, well, before I started talking to these solicitors, I'd never actually heard the term medical negligence or clinical negligence. Obviously, I could work out what it meant, but it wasn't in my vocabulary, as it were.
It's not your standard day-to-day terms.
And I thought, well, therefore it's probably not in the vocabulary of their typical potential client. And I thought, okay, so put yourself in their shoes. You're sitting at home, you're off work because you've had this operation go wrong, or you've been misdiagnosed, or whatever it is. What do you want to do? What's the outcome you're looking for? Because people don't buy services, they buy outcomes. And so I did a little bit of research on the idea that I'd had, and then I set up the ads for it with this new keyword, and it worked a treat. We cut the cost per click from around £20 down to £4.
Oh, wow.
And that keyword was sue the NHS.
No way.
And I always remember, because when I told the guy I was dealing with at the law firm, I've tested this and this and it, he said, I don't know if we want to be, some of that, because that sort of, cheapens what we do a bit, or, And I said, okay, but that is actually what you do, though, isn't it? You sue the NHS. And he said, well, yeah, we do, but, and I said, well, it's £4 a click rather than 20. He said, oh, go on, man, run with it. And, and we did. And of course, we tied the whole thing together. So not only was the keyword that, we made sure that in the advert, it said something like, want to sue the NHS, we can help. And so, of course, again, when all these other adverts are talking in stuffy language about negligence and blah, 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 and suddenly you've got this advert that stands out as, talking the layman's language, people were attracted to that. So, these are guys, we're on a level with these guys. They talk the same language we do. And obviously, after a while, other advertisers caught onto it. But for a good few months, we had a definite lead on them just by putting yourself in the client's shoes, which is not a new marketing concept. It's what good advertisers and marketers have been doing for God knows how long.
No, and absolutely, because I know whenever I have conversations with people about creating content for social media, and it's like they kind of have that tunnel vision of what they're doing, and they're talking about it, and it's like, no, you've got to put yourself in the other person's shoes, you know.
Yeah.
Or they'll post something because it's what they like, but actually it doesn't talk or say anything to the reader or the audience, because it's just, you can't base stuff on your own opinions. You have to think wider.
Yeah, and particularly with something like social media, where people aren't looking to be sold to, they're looking to get information and they want value. You know, and with that kind of thing, I always say to my clients, if you're trying to come up with ideas for, you know, whether it's a Facebook post or a blog post or a PDF you're going to give away, whatever it is, think about what are the problems and challenges your kind of client has, and how you can solve them. So
totally.
Like there's I've got, obviously, because of the sector I work mainly in, I've got clients who are mortgage brokers who are trying to attract people who are looking to move house. You don't want to create content for them about how exciting all the different types of mortgages are, or how hard it is to get a mortgage at the moment because no one's lending or anything like that. What you want to create is content that says, here are 10 tips on how to sell your house faster, because that's what keeps a home mover awake at night. Is their chain going to fall apart, or are we going to sell their house quick enough to get into the one they really want? So give them content around that. Problem
solving just is massive, rather than just talking at people. I see, for example, lots of virtual assistants creating posts, and it says like 4 hours for like X amount, and it's like, and that means nothing to me, because I don't actually know what it is that you're going to do. You need to actually sow those seeds, and you need to kind of create that storytelling to kind of make you think, oh, okay, that sounds like really good. This is what they can do for me. Whereas if you just say, this is my offer, well,
exactly. So yes, I mean, in that kind of example, off the top of my head, if I was talking to a VA who wanted to do some kind of social media content or blog post, I would say, right, what's the big challenge your potential clients have? It's probably that they're running their own business, they're rushed off their feet, they never get any time to spend with their friends or their family, they're feeling guilty about the fact they're working 10 hours a day and they're missing the kids growing up and all that kind of stuff. So I'd create something, 10 ways to improve your time management or work more efficiently. And 9 of those tips would be nothing to do with having a VA, and 1 of them would be about having a VA. And say, obviously, if this tip is of interest to you, give me a call because I can talk to you about that. But you make all the other things that you can't possibly sell them yourself, because then it stops it being a sales pitch. But you've still added value and been useful.
Well, it's like for my soon-to-be 4-year-old son, I give him options. Based on what I want them to be, but they sound appealing to him, and it's like you almost manipulate the conversation a little bit for your own gain. But again, it's sowing those seeds and making him think, oh, okay, oh yeah, that's like my idea now. So yeah, I'm buying into it. Whereas if I said go and do this, nah, it's not going to happen.
I can see a book in that, Parenting by Manipulation. I think it could be a bestseller.
Exactly. Anyway, we've got a question from Jen. If you're just starting out with Google Ads, what would you suggest is a good starting budget? I know this is kind of like asking how long is a piece of string.
Yeah, I was going to ask back, how long is that piece of string you've got there? It will vary a lot depending on your sector. Because obviously, as we said, in some sectors the cost per click is quite high, in others it's quite low. Also, it depends on the profit margins in the product or service you're selling, because suppose you're selling a high ticket service of some sort where you typically charge your client, say, £1,000, and you make £500 profit on that, for example. If you go out with an initial test budget on Google Ads of £250, that's not enough to test for that kind of thing, because you might spend your whole £250 and get nothing. That doesn't mean it hasn't worked, because it might be if you'd spent another £100, you'd have got that £1,000 client, made 500 profit, and you've still only spent 350. So it will vary depending on that. I mean, if I'm asked for a sort of ballpark, I say don't start with less than £500 a month. And the more important thing is, don't try and if you've got a small budget initially, and that's fine, it will work with a small initial budget, don't try and advertise on too many different terms all at once. So for example, take the extreme, if you've got an e-commerce website selling 100 different products and you only want to start off with £500 a month, fine, but just pick 2 or 3 products to test with that £500 budget, and pick ones where you've got a decent profit margin and there's not loads of other people selling the same thing. Or if you're a VA, then just pick one type of client and just run a campaign that is virtual assistant for dentists, or something that you already have a specialism in and several clients in, because that will make your test budget go further rather than trying to spread it so thinly that it's not got a chance of working.
And would you say there's like a minimum with like the test period of time you should try it for, like say a minimum of 3 months, to see kind of what works, what doesn't work, before you kind of start to refine it?
Again, it depends a little bit on your sales cycle, you see. So with the kind of stuff that I do, it typically can be 5 to 6 months before someone who first saw one of my adverts somewhere is ready to actually sign on the dotted line and work with me. So I would have to test something for a lot longer before I could say for definite that it worked or it didn't work. At the other end of the spectrum, if you are someone who, if you're selling, I don't know, pens, where it's a £1 biro or something, and it's not a big purchasing decision, you're going to know pretty quickly whether your ads are working or not.
No, that makes sense. Matt is back with his techie questions. There used to be rumours of PPC affecting search rankings. Any truth in this?
Not any sort of actual published definite truth or any admission from Google that it affects it. So what we're talking about here, I'm assuming, is there have been rumours over the years that if you advertise on Google, it will help your organic rankings as well. I've never seen any direct evidence of that myself, and also it's counterintuitive, because if Google has got someone who is paying them money every month to run Google Ads, why would Google reward them for that by pushing them up the organic rankings? Because then there's more chance that the person will stop advertising because they're now high on the organic rankings. Where there is a definite correlation, though, is that if you are already on page 1 of Google in the organic search results for whatever search term it is, very often that's the point at which people think, I will stop running Google Ads now. And that's, I think, a mistake, because if you carry on running Google Ads in that situation, you're going to be on Google page 1 twice, well, once in the ads and once in the organics. So you've got more chance someone's going to click you. But also, if your Google Ads is working and giving a positive return on investment, why would you stop? If for every £5 you spend on Google Ads, you get £10 back, why would you not keep finding new £5 notes to feed that machine with? But the really interesting one, and this is, there's a lot of psychology in how people behave online, and that's the bit that personally I find the most interesting. Is it's been shown that if you are in the Google Ads results and in the organics, there will be a lot of people who see you in the Google Ads results. They don't click on you there because they're still scanning down the page, or they're one of those I don't click on the ads people. And then they keep scanning down the page and they see you in the organics. Now that means that's now the second time they've seen you in the space of a few seconds. So subconsciously, there's a reinforcement effect there. And it increases the chance that they're going to click on that organic result. And it has been shown that in that kind of scenario, when people stop advertising on Google, it also reduces the number of clicks they get on that organic result as well. So
I guess that makes sense though as well, because it's almost like, we were just chatting briefly about LinkedIn before we went live and talking about content creation, about people just want those quick results overnight. And it's almost like, I often say, where people will post lots and then they stop because they become busy. And then it's like, okay, they lose a client or something happens, project ends, and they return to LinkedIn and they expect the same amount of support and interest to be the same, even though they haven't touched it for like 2-3 months. It's like, it's not going to happen. You need to be consistent.
Yeah, exactly. And so many people aren't, because either they expect instant results, and when they haven't landed £1 million client within a week of doing this stuff, they give up. Or they just get busy. I'm going to later on today, I'm going to be recording a short video review of someone's website, and he's a recruitment consultant. And one of the things I'm going to be saying in that video is, I can pretty much guarantee I know what your New Year's resolutions are every year. Every year, your New Year's resolution is to blog. Because when you look back at his blog, every January, there's 3 or 4 blog posts. And then nothing till August, where there's like 1 post there, which is probably when he's quiet in the summer. And then 3 more in January.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not, it doesn't work like that.
And that happens with so many people, doesn't it? They have the
Yeah.
best intentions and they're like, yes, this is going to happen. You know, I'm raring to go. I'm going back to work. My kids have gone back to school. I'm going to focus on this. And then what will happen is it'll just slowly drift off.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Jen said, thank you for the response. So can you explain what the Google quality score is? What is the Google quality score?
Right. Okay. We're going very techie now. Right. So, you obviously feel the audience is sufficiently warmed up now that we can. Okay. Right. And this is the problem as well. We're doing it on Zoom. You can't see the confused faces if this is too much too soon. Right. Okay. So you'll have to react for the audience and look really confused if this is going wrong. Right. So quality score. So I talked earlier on about the fact that it's an auction, and basically, you know, the more someone bids, the higher up they'll appear. Yeah. You know, so it's not actually as simple as that. It was in the very early days of pay-per-click advertising, and when I say the early days, I'm talking pre-Google, because Google were not the first to do this. Like most things, they came along after everyone else had tried it.
When was it Google launched?
They launched as a search engine in the late 90s, 98, I think. And they launched Google Ads in 2000, I think. But maybe it didn't come to the UK till 2001, but it's around about then. But prior to them, there were people like, well, Yahoo was still around, you know, and all the other search engines like Lycos, Alta Vista, showing my age here. But you know, so certainly Yahoo were doing pay-per-click advertising before Google existed. And the way that it worked there was very simply, the more you bid, the higher up you'll appear. Now, when Google came along, they thought that that's too simplistic. And also it means that basically the big companies will always outperform the small businesses. Yeah. Because they've got deeper pockets. It also means that actually you could get to the top of the ads just by having lots of money, even if your advert was rubbish and, you know, and wasn't relevant to what people were searching for.
Money talk.
Yeah. And also it opened it up to, so let's say, for example, you're let's say I'm that injury lawyer, right? So I'm in an industry where it's £20 a click and I don't want to pay £20 a click. Yeah. So I could bid on something that is really popular, like say there's a craze like, I don't know, fidget spinners. Yeah. Then as the injury lawyer, I could bid on the keyword fidget spinners, have my advert appear, and it's not at all relevant that search term, but some people will click it anyway because it's there. And I might pick up some business from that. Now, but I'm only paying, you know, £1 a click or whatever. Now, Google clearly didn't want that happening because A, it's kind of cheating the system, but also it means then people will say that Google's search results are rubbish because I searched for a fidget spinner and I got an injury lawyer. So they introduced this concept of quality. So what they do is every keyword in your account that you're bidding on is given a quality score from 1 to 10, with 10 being the best. And what Google does to decide which ads to show and in which order, it uses a combination of how much you're bidding and what your quality score is. Right. Okay. Right? So if you and I are both virtual assistants and we're both bidding on that keyword, as I said before, virtual assistant for dentists. Yeah. Maybe you're bidding £2, I'm bidding £1. If I've got a quality score of say 10 and you've got a quality score of 2, even though you're bidding more than me, I'll probably appear higher up than you will. Yeah. Okay? So, and that's why Google Ads can actually work for small businesses, because it's not just about who's got the most money. It's about who puts the most effort into developing a good quality score. So how do you get a good quality score? Well, the main factors in it are how relevant is your advert to the keyword? Yeah. So the reason I might have a better quality score in that example is maybe my advert says virtual assistant for dental practices or for dentists, whereas yours just says virtual assistant. Yeah. You know? So I've made my advert specific to it. Obviously, that means I need lots of different adverts, but that's fine. You can have lots of different ads, and you can say to Google, you know, I want this ad to go with these keywords and this ad to go with these ones. Yeah. And it's also the other thing that affects the quality score is what the click-through rate of your ad is. In other words, how often it gets clicked versus how often it's shown. So the more popular your ad is, the more its quality score is. So again, if I'm say at number 3 in the ads, but my ad is really well written and it's got lots of benefits in it and talks about the outcomes, or, you know, uses the customer language or anything like that. Yeah. If I get a higher click-through rate than the guys at number 1, that will increase my quality score, and I could actually move up and overtake them. And then the third major thing is how relevant your landing page on your website is. So again, using that VA for dentists example, to do the job properly, I would want to make sure that I sent people to a landing page on my site that purely talked about the VA services I provided for dentists, had dentist case studies, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So basically you're being rewarded at every step of the way for giving the searcher what they're actually looking for. If people want to know the actual maths behind all that, there is quite an in-depth article about it on my website. They can go and look at it if they're having trouble sleeping or whatever. But that's the kind of high-level overview of it. But it does the big takeaway from it is it's not just about who's got the most money, because Google has to, from Google's point of view, they have to strike a balance, don't they? If they could take the easy route and just go, we'll just sell to the highest bidder.
Yeah,
but that's not a long-term strategy, because then their search results become crap, and then people stop using Google, and then they start not making any money. So they've got to balance the interests of their pocket versus the interests of the searcher and the interests of the advertiser, and try and keep them all in balance. And that's basically what the quality score system does.
And what's the difference between CPM, CPC, and CPV bidding? Firstly, what do those abbreviations even mean? What's the difference between them?
So CPC is the one we've been talking about all the way up to now. So cost per click. So that's where you're paying each time your ad is clicked rather than anything else. Within certain parts of Google, because Google Ads isn't just about ads appearing at the top of the Google search results. Google Ads also drives something called the display network, which is where you see ads on third-party websites. Like, you might be browsing your local newspaper's website and you'll see ads. They're very often powered by Google. And Google, because Google owns YouTube, Google Ads also drives all the advertising on YouTube as well. So CPC is your cost per click. CPV is cost per view. So that applies when you're doing video advertising on YouTube. Like the ads that appear at the start or in the middle of the thing you actually want to watch. And CPM, that's an age-old expression from the pre-digital days. Cost per mille, as in MILLE, the French for 1,000. So that's a cost per 1,000 impressions. So that is where, if you want to, you can on the display ads pay for the impressions your ad gets rather than the clicks. It's not normally what I recommend doing. It's normally something you don't really do if you're just going after brand awareness. And because most of the clients I work with are smaller businesses who brand awareness is a bit of a luxury item for them. They're more interested in actual sales. So
money.
So from what you've said about your audience here, I would imagine that CPM probably wouldn't be something they'd be advised to be doing.
No, it makes sense. Which sectors do you think can benefit most from this form of marketing?
It can work for any sector, really, because people will look on Google for absolutely anything. I would say there are sectors where it's more difficult. So it's more difficult in the e-commerce world, for example, because you've got a lot of different products to advertise. The margins are generally smaller. Your competition is going to be, people like Tesco or Amazon or Argos or whatever. So it's easier, I think, in the service-based sectors. But I've seen it work for people when I used to run public training courses, and we'd have 10 or 20 people come on a Google Ads course, and they're all from different businesses. I've literally trained everything from breweries to accountants, estate agents, someone who had a website selling bondage equipment. That was fun during the keyword brainstorming session when I put them into pairs to do that. So anything really.
So with saying about brainstorming, so that's probably a good thing when someone's first starting to think about the keywords and everything else and different tools and everything, but is to almost do a brainstorm session, isn't it? Of what are those kind of keywords? What is it that attracts people to them? Just to get themselves thinking further out.
And really focus on trying to make it the more specific ones. So if you say, because if you say to a room full of people, right, you're thinking of going on holiday, what are you going to Google for? They'll probably say cheap holidays or cheap flights. And that probably is the first thing they'll search for, but they won't book a holiday at that point, or they're very unlikely to, because they're at that early research phase in the keyword funnel. So the clever advertiser would say, right, let's let's leave it to the likes of, I don't know what travel agents are still around, but Thomas Cook, are they still around? No, they've gone, haven't they? Anyway, let's leave it to the big travel agents to bid on things like cheap holidays.
Yeah.
But as the smaller advertiser, I'm going to wait until the person has worked out what kind of holiday they want, and I'm going to bid on, I know, Gite holidays in the Dordogne.
Yeah.
And there'll only be a smaller number of searches for that, but the people who do search for it are far more likely to be buyers than the person who searches for cheap holidays. And you can get round the low search issue, because obviously if you're selling Gite holidays in the Dordogne, there's going to be lots of other kinds of specific holidays you're selling. So they're all different keywords, and between them, although each one only gets a small number of searches between them, you'll still get a decent search volume, but you're probably paying less for each click, and you're getting a warmer prospect coming to your website.
No, makes sense.
The reason a lot of people have a bad view of Google Ads is very often because they've rushed in, done it themselves, and followed all of Google's very helpful setup wizard. And Google's very helpful setup wizard, with all its nice, easy default settings, will normally put more money in Google's pocket than in yours. So I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that everyone needs to go out and engage someone like me or go and work with an agency, but at the very least, do a bit of reading up and a bit of learning before you rush in. There's in fact, if you do nothing else, go to my website and download my free guide to setting up your first Google Ads campaign, because at least that will stop you making the most horrendous errors.
No, sounds like it's a very good blog, and lots of useful information on your website as well. So what are the absolute no-nos of Google Ads?
If someone asked me to audit their Google Ads account, I would say I can normally guarantee what the 5 errors are that I'm going to see in every account if they're kind of just made it up themselves. Firstly, their targeting will be off. In other words, they will be bidding on the things like cheap holidays rather than the more specific things.
They'll be detailed.
They won't have conversion tracking set up. That's a big thing. So you can't improve what you can't measure, as the old saying goes. And the thing is, within Google Ads, you can measure. You can actually, if you set up the conversion tracker, you can see which keywords bring you sales or leads and which ones don't, which adverts do and don't. And then obviously you can start pumping more money into the ones that work and turning off the ones that don't. But without conversion tracking, you can't do any of that. Badly written adverts, adverts that are just full of facts and features rather than benefits. So the other big thing is not having your website sorted first. That's probably, although that's not directly a Google Ads mistake, it's a really it will have a big effect on it. You wouldn't, if you had a shop on the high street where you hadn't finished putting up all the shelves, or there was rubbish strewn all over the floor, you'd be ill-advised to, at that point, start running advertising campaigns to send people to your shop. But people do that with Google Ads. They send people to a website that's just never going to convert. Getting people from Google Ads to your website is the relatively easy bit. The hard bit is making that website get them to take the desired action.
It all needs to flow nicely, because otherwise it's just it's not going to pull together, I guess. That makes perfect sense. In the meantime, how and where can people find you?
Well, the website is theppcmachine.co.uk. They can find me on Twitter @David Miles. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Google AdWords guy on there. And if there are any people listening in financial services, mortgage brokers, IFAs, whatever, I have a private Facebook group just for you guys, with lots of tips and advice on improving your marketing, and that's at mortgagebrokermarketing.co.uk.
Awesome. Well, maybe after this you can email me with all the details, and then I can kind of add them to the comment section.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be brilliant. But thank you so much. Doesn't look like there are any more questions, but I think we've covered quite a lot. But it's been really, really, really interesting. So thank you so much for your time today.
No, thanks for having me on. It's been good.
And yes, as I say, if you send me over the information, and then I can add it. I know lots of people are planning to watch this on replay. So thank you so much.